Hey, listen in. If you're still strapping your expensive camera to your neck with a flimsy strap that looks like more fashion than function, congrats, you're living on the edge. But hey, if you'd rather not risk turning your camera gear into a pile of broken dreams, then maybe, just maybe, check out Cotton Carrier Camera Carrying System. You can carry on living dangerously, or you can carry gear safe and sound with cottoncarrier.com. While you're in there, use code BTW10 for a 10% discount on anything found on the website. cottoncarrier.com.
Beyond the Wild.
Hey, welcome back, fellas, to the Beyond the Wild podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, not just fellas, but the fellas I'm looking at. Welcome back. It's been a while since we've all gotten together, and we just had quite the animated conversation before we hit the record button, and I'm glad it was before.
We can all get along now.
We can all get along now.
As we always do.
No, it was animated in a fun way, not in a
definitely
argumentative way. It's been a while. How's everybody doing?
That's great. Fantastic.
Jason Loftus, you cannot nod on an audio podcast. When I ask you a question, you cannot reply with a nod. You must verbalize.
No, that's fair.
I was indicating that I should go first, and I was looking at you, waiting to hear who should respond to your introductory question.
Thanks,
Sorry,
Mark.
I thought he was saying I'm good.
Well, plus I thought maybe people could hear the rattle, so.
Yeah, true.
Good, Mark.
Funny. Yeah, things are great. I don't want to talk about weather for long because everybody does, but it's been so hot. So broke a record back to 1932 a couple of days ago here, but it's cooled off now. It's awesome. Had a great day work-wise, and I was on a trip since our last show, and
and you had some special guests on that trip, correct?
Yeah, very special. And it feels, I love podcasting to you guys, but it's been a gap. So it's great to see you both and looking forward to hearing what you guys have been up to. But I don't know if you want me to dive into that. But yeah, I'll say quickly, my daughter and almost 2-year-old grandson and her partner were here for 3 weeks. And we spent 1 week of them in the Rockies and doing a family trip and on their way back to Australia. And had an awesome time. Great weather, super smoky, wildfires starting out the first day. Even bought an air purifier for the cabin, but then it cleared, thankfully. So the remainder of that week was beautiful. And I saw a bit late for some of the wildlife spring transitioning to summer. A bit late for a little bit of it, but had some great grizzly encounters on the last morning that made the trip photographically worthwhile. And at this time of year, so this was in June, the middle of June, the elk calves and stuff are popping out here and there. So they're always fun to see and their playful antics and to watch that, especially for people who don't get to see them very often. And showing that all to my grandson at times for his patience level was fun when he encountered them. Saw a black bear, and it was a big deal for him. So it was funny because we say, "Do you see it, Kai? Do you see it?" And you hear this little, yes. So, but he's wide-eyed, right? So had a great time. The best kind of, I love all trips, but it was making memories, right? That's why we do trips, whether it's wildlife, family. It's important to do things those different days. Shout out to Jean-Pierre, my friend. The Vuja days are my priority whenever possible. Not deja vus, Vuja days, as a saying he relayed to me on a trip a couple of years ago. Make it fresh and the memories stick to the wall much better and mean more.
That's cool.
Yeah. That was fun to see the pics of you and your grandson. That was awesome.
Yeah.
We'll put some on YouTube. There's some funny ones of him we had some wildlife statues, and he was having a great time. Fit right in.
How about you, Jason Loftus?
I have been grounded. I've not been on any of my little weekend getaways, but for good reason. We've been doing the youth camp. So that's been going really well. 14 kids have been participating every weekend, and we've received some really good feedback so far. Even had, it sounds kind of quirky or dorky, whatever you want to call it, but one of the gals that's in the class, she made each of us a little card. And it was handmade, right, by her, and it's a little handmade pop-up card. So that was just kind of fun that she's showing her appreciation for what we're teaching them and that through that way. But anyways, this is the last Saturday coming up here. We're recording this on Thursday, the 26th. And this is the last Saturday of the camp. It's going to be a big Saturday. Picture Line's coming down to support the class for the kickoff. Colin will be there for just the beginning of it and hopefully answer any questions the parents and kids may have about gear and options and stuff like that. The Deseret News is going to be there with a photographer. They're really this camp's getting some attention.
Big time.
I don't know about big time, but it's getting some attention, which is kind of fun. And the kids are really, I think, appreciative of what's going on, and the parents have, thanked us multiple times already too. So we will be doing some interviews with the kids at the end of the course, and hopefully we can make a little bit, maybe either a little mini episode or something to talk about how the rest of the camp went and share some of those thoughts from the kids. And then hopefully next year we got to talk about how we want to structure it next year. But we plan on doing it again next year for sure. So, anybody that's listening that's interested and has kids that maybe might be able to come participate, just be aware of that it should be an option next year as well. So it's been going good, really good. The other thing I've been doing is I did sneak out because I got my 100 to 300 lens, thanks to my friends at Picture Line, and was able to go out and play with that a little bit, and been doing some photography on the island with the 2X converter on there. So shooting 200 to 600 at 5.6. It's just blown away by the sharpness of the lens. I mean, it's definitely, if I'm being picky, there is a little bit of degradation when you're being like super cropped in, pixel peeping type of stuff. But it's still super sharp. It's just a little bit of I'd call it just a little bit of image degradation. But it's so unnoticeable that when you do the software cleanup and stuff, it's gone. It's perfectly fine. It's very, very functional. And again, I am being very picky. So this lens is incredible. Been able to get some really cool images, lots of burrowing owls running around, and encountered some antelope and some bison. Bison are already kind of starting to pre-rut here on the island. Seeing a little bit of that activity. Some of the bulls, tagging right by a cow and trying to kind of corral them, and some of those behaviors are already starting to begin. So it's been interesting shooting this lens, and a pleasure. I mean, I am super pumped to get this thing out in the field, when we go to Katmai, for example, and really put it through its paces. So
out of 10 stars, how many stars for the 1 to 300 2.8?
12.
It's hard not to rate it 9 or 10, seriously, because when you put the 2X on it, when you put the 1.4 on it, you can't even, there's no material, there's no degradation at all. It's incredible. And it being an aspherical lens, there's a lot of benefits to that too. And the zoom range, getting all those things, the zoom range and everything, with the 1.4, you're 140 to 420 at f4.
F4. Yeah.
So that's pretty incredible. And honestly, in Katmai, I plan on probably taking the teleconverter off for a lot of it and just shooting at one, especially when I need the light, I can take it off and I'm at 1 to 300 when you're in those close quarters. That's plenty for a lot of the stuff you're doing. So it's such a versatile lens with the zoom, with the teleconverter use. I don't know, Ron, what do you think? I mean, it's hard not to rate it a 10.
So you each picked one up.
Yeah, and let's add here, because the relationship with Picture Line has been far more than just the podcast sponsorship. Jens pulled some strings because there is waiting lists in a lot of places, so they didn't have any in stock. He pulled some strings and was able to get us a couple copies after we were there at PhotoX. we were with the Canon guys. Jason and I grabbed that lens and grabbed a 2X and just went outside. Just crazy sharp. And I've been waiting for the 200 to 500 forever, 300 to 600, whatever it is that they're going to do. But I've now got a 200 to 600 f5.6 lens that I'm completely happy with, especially with video. Jason talked about a little bit of image degradation with stills, and it is, I'm super happy with it. I went out and was able to photograph some pygmy owls, and the feather detail, even, at a little bit of distance and in poor light. And that's one other thing that I want to touch on that Jason didn't, is the image stabilization in that lens seems to be on another level from anything I've shot in the past. Especially, I've had the EF class, the 200 to 400, which is an old lens at this point. The image stabilization technology in the lens and in body gives you several stops of light. I was shooting under 100th of a second and perfectly sharp, great feather detail.
Handheld.
Handheld.
It's 600 millimeters.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And then for video, it's crazy. The other thing is there's a big difference that I've noticed already between shooting the EF and RF glass. So EF converted to RF with the adapter, or adapted, I guess. And then the RF, the focus, even with the teleconverter on, the focus is much faster and much stickier. So it is different. Communicating through that RF teleconverter to the RF lens, it's definitely a little bit different. And that's advantageous as well. Can't thank those guys enough for getting those in our hands, especially giving us an opportunity to kind of fine tune how we work with it prior to going to Alaska.
Yeah.
But
yeah, the focus is insane. Even with the teleconverter at 600, I was getting some burrowing owls in flight, and I was blown away by how well I was getting shots that I should not have gotten, and it was sharp. Just it's really amazing. And when I got to be so careful when I say file degradation, I'm talking literally at the pixel peeping level. If I'm looking at a purest, pixel peep and look at a 400 image, for example, with no teleconverter, and this, yes, there is a small minor amount of degradation, but it's so unnoticeable that I'm perfectly happy with what it's doing, right? Especially, like I said, with just a little bit of cleanup in post, you don't even notice it, So when I say that, I want to be clear. Like, it's not anything to worry about. It's not worth. I should maybe not even have mentioned it, right? But I know some of you folks out there like me, and I'm super, super picky about sharpness and the quality of my images because I want to be able to blow them up and print them at whatever size I want, right? So, anyways. And it's not an issue. I would shoot this lens with a 2X on it in any situation. So
I had a Swift Fox den, and they moved. It was kind of a little tragedy of nature. Went out one morning, and the den was very close to the road, and it's a county road, so there's traffic, oil field traffic. Those guys drive faster than they should sometimes. But one of the kits was hit, and nothing came out. I didn't see anything for about a day and a half. And then I found them, and they had just moved a little bit further from the road. She moved them about 50 yards. But the area that she moved them to had very tall grass. We've gotten a ton of rain. It's been unseasonably cool until today. But we've gotten a lot of rain, so areas that might have had 6-inch grass before, the grass is 2.5 feet this year. And that's the area that they're in. So you've got all those blades of grass that are competing with the subject for a focus point if you're using autofocus. And it was crazy how fast or how well they did with locking on to the subject and locking on to the movement. I'm very happy with it. I don't it was not a bad decision for me at all. However, there is the cost of doing something like that.
What?
So
What are you talking about? What's that?
yeah, no, it's crazy. So I have a whole bunch of stuff for sale, and
I saw your story.
four of the
Yeah.
5 items are still for sale. So I think the 600 is gone, the 2 to 400 is available, 28 to 70, 16 to 35, or 15 to 35. Sorry, those are all still for sale, and an adapter. So anyway,
It's a good opportunity for somebody that's looking for an upgrade or something, right? So
great lenses,
Yep.
super sharp,
very capable.
very capable. But the difference between carrying this and carrying the 2 to 4 is measurable. The other thing is with the new technology, and I know, Mark, some of the Nikon lenses that you're using, some of the newer ones, did it as well. And they basically moved it's not that they made them that much lighter, but they feel a lot lighter because they moved everything back toward the center of gravity, which is move the center of gravity, I should say, back closer to your center. So as you're holding it up, you're not holding all the weight at the end of the lens and the heavy glass. They move things back and toward the center, so the lens, while it might not be more than a pound and a half lighter, it feels light as a feather, just because of the way the weight is sitting and your body mechanics. So it's a pleasure to shoot. I will just say that.
I think this is the first time in photography history that photographers who I know what they're talking about are saying that a 2 times converter is okay. I mean, I've never owned one because of the compromise. I'd rather crop in post or be physically closer, assuming it's fine to do so, than use a 2 times. In fact, I've never owned a 1.4 times. But in a situation like this, I mean, if it's doing what you're describing, that's amazing. That's revolutionary. That's new to have that in your pocket, to be able to go from a 1 to 3, 2.8, which is, I mean, super appealing, to put on a 1.4 2 times. There was, there have been times my 180 to 6, I wish I could be obviously an 80 to 6, right? Pull out further, could make a wider field of view for what's happening. But I mean, I'm not complaining about that lens either. I'm very happy with it, but it's not a 2.8, right? So I have to get the animals against a clean background, a beautiful river or sky, so it looks like a shallow depth of field.
Right. Yeah, there's other lenses that do this too. Let's be real. Like, I know the Sony 300 I've heard is just incredible with the 2X on it as well.
With the 2X? Nice.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. And, anymore, all of my RF lenses, I have no problem shooting with a 1.4. I can't even see any level of degradation at all. Seriously, I can't see it. So they've definitely, all that technology has definitely come a long ways, to your point, for sure. But I'm the same way you are. I didn't even own a 2X before I bought this lens. I didn't even ever think I would own a 2X, quite honestly. But after shooting it with this now, it's, part of the kit for sure.
Well, everything advances and improves, the past years and decades of photography equipment. Why wouldn't the converters get better?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's funny.
Awesome.
Ron mentioned when we were at the show, Picture Line, how we went out, and it was funny watching the Canon guys. They were just kind of like laughing at us because we were like a couple little kids over there, just like, "Oh my gosh, holy cow, look at that! That's insane! I don't believe it."
Another ice cream?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Both the Canon guys were laughing at us, but
It was crazy. It is crazy, but it makes for a very lightweight kit now. 24 to 105 and 100 to 300 with a 2X teleconverter.
Yeah. Throwing a 70 to 200 and 24 to 70, 3 lenses, you've got it covered.
Yeah,
that might be what I'm taking to Katmai, by the way. Just
I'm taking a 24 to 105 and a 100 to 300. That's it.
Yeah, there you go.
with the 2X, and
I don't own a 24 to 105, so I don't have that kind of money. So
that's yeah, right. Okay, Johnny Prime.
All right, I want to watch you guys go at this. This is good.
Jason, for those of you who don't know,
here we go.
Most of you don't. Jason bought me a T-shirt.
I did. It was a nice, thoughtful.
And there's going to be another T-shirt, and it's going to say Johnny Prime, big JP and a Superman logo in the front of it. So, yeah, no, market, honestly, I know some of the Nikon glass as well. You've been super happy with it, and it lightened your kit as well and gave you a little bit more flexibility. And I think that's exactly what this lens does.
Yeah, it's amazing what the new gear, and it is that's exciting when you do come across a piece of equipment when you test it and it's that good that you know it's going to improve what you do in the field, whether it's the tech side, whether it's the weight, they're all important elements. We're all, traveling on smaller planes in some situations to be able to accommodate that. So I feel the excitement, and yeah, it happened when I switched to mirrorless with Nikon, and every generation that happens is exciting. I'm not in a rush to do it again because of the expense, right? And I'm actually not even watching too closely about the rumor mills of what's coming, but some of these companies like Nikon are kind of due to be making whispers of what the next chapter is. But I'm happy. I mean, the 800 6.3 PF lens is if I wish I'd had that from day one, for sure. It's light, it's hand-holdable for me. The reach is something I've never had, and on a 45 megapixel sensor, it's amazing, right? So, but there's all these elements, all so much changing all the time. So it's cool to hear that the lens has come out that has made you both excited and that you've got it, and it'll be a key component of your upcoming trips. I could see it being perfect for fishing bears.
Yeah, for sure.
And kit wise, I mean, I don't know, are we going today? But if somebody was doing sheep, the smaller the kit, the better. In fact, there's choices. Like if I was doing a long hike day, if I know it's going to be a long barren ground caribou hike day or a sheep day, I just take one body and one lens. The sheep, I some situations I'd take a smaller zoom too, but the 180 to 6, or in this case, the 1 to 3 on one body helps a lot because there's other gear to take too. Do you guys want to do that, or are we gonna postpone it and do more catch up?
Oh, we have to do it now.
Yeah, I think we should do it. Jump in.
Yeah, who's that guy who opened up the door? Sorry. So we've been doing episodes, or we've done one, but there's so many we can do. We did an elk episode recently talking about our favorite aspects of photographing that charismatic megafauna bugling ungulate through the seasons, and especially during the fall rut. But we've talked about there's so many species that we've kind of specialized in over our time in the field that we could share stories, experiences, insights, and pro tips for, that we'd like to do episodes on each species, maybe more than one over time. Who knows? But wild sheep, starting out in a wildlife photography career, it wasn't like, I know there are people are obsessed with sheep, and I get it. I do now. I certainly get it. But starting out, it was like, let's find wolves, let's find a moose, let's find bears. Sheep were interesting, but it wasn't until having experiences with them that it was like, oh my gosh, these guys are fun. They're super photogenic, guys and girls, and the lambs, all aspects of sheep. But they are very photogenic, and they live in such a dramatic landscape, because we can all do close-ups, but it's one of those species that you can pull back in the right situation and get an amazing image of an incredible part of this planet and the mountainous regions they live in. So we would like to spend some of today's podcast talking about sheep, and there are bighorn sheep, there are stone sheep, there are dull sheep. Bighorn sheep are amazing in how they're different from the far south to the north here in Canada structurally. They almost look like two different species, the desert bighorns and the Rocky Mountain bighorns. My personal experience is with the Rocky Mountain bighorns and Dall sheep in Alaska and the Yukon. And Dall sheep are the white-bodied ones, nicknamed thin-horn sheep because their horns aren't quite as heavy, but are still magnificent. And unlike antlered
Tend
animals,
to be longer because they
yeah,
don't broom as often. They do broom
true.
occasionally, and brooming is just when they're eating or rutting, or they'll get down and rub their tips on the rocks, in the rocks, on trees, break them off, and then it doesn't. The point goes away and becomes a little bit heavier at the end. But yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, so the different species that way. With my experiences with Dall sheep, they can be just as magnificent an animal in their pure white coat, whereas bighorns or Rocky Mountain bighorns are brownish with white backside and brown stripe in the middle. In the sense that if you look at them from a distance, it looks like an eyeball looking back at you from the backside. Oh, there's so many things about sheep, though, and not just photographically, behaviorally, that are fun. And don't let me forget before we conclude this episode to talk about how rams engage one another sometimes to bang heads, headbutt in the rut, because it's really funny and unique in wildlife from my perspective. But to start with, I think the stories will come naturally. There have been some amazing ones, and that's kind of what has spoken to me. And even guests that I've taken on sheep trips, on tours that way, don't necessarily anticipate it to be a highlight reel. You know, they look forward to the hike in the mountains and the vistas and that experience. But after it, you know, I can see clearly how much they're moved by this species, or these species in this case for wild sheep, and the world they live in, and what they learned about them on that day just through observation that we have over the years too. And so yeah, there's everything from camera gear, kit, planning for a day of photographing wild sheep, because it is a different experience, and how to do so smartly. But I think I should stop. I've got a whole list of subjects, but I don't want to just go on a monologue here for you guys too. So I know Ron and I shared an amazing day with Dall sheep, and we all need to spend some more time. And I know Jason, if you've watched our intro from the beginning of Beyond the Wild podcast, has had some of the most amazing bighorn opportunities that I've seen. I mean, we timed it with the intro. That headbutting video that you have, that knock that echoes like a shot across the terrain, is just magnificent to see them back up, lift up, and smash heads in the rut, and doing so while they're sober too.
Right.
So yeah, what was that day like? Or
Oh yeah.
before we get into some tips, maybe let's share a favorite experience. It doesn't have to be that one, obviously. That's just one that stuck with me because it was perfect video.
Yeah, that day was actually pretty fun, and I actually had my son Hunter with me on that trip too. So we went to photograph the sheep, and we were intentionally going in October because, as you know, Mark, mid to late October, the Rocky Bighorns, anyways, I don't know about the other sheep, excuse me, they will do the headbutting. They do a lot of the headbutting early before the rut actually kicks off. So knowing that, you can time your adventures on what you're trying to capture. A lot of people might think that activity and that behavior is during the rut, but it does happen during the rut, but it's nowhere near as often. And we just happened to time it just right where there was a group of rams. There was probably 9 rams in this group, and they were just running all over the place. and they would stop in an area and they'd just take turns headbutting. Then they'd move and they'd run. One of them would take off and they'd all follow them, and they'd go somewhere else and we'd chase after them, and then they would turn around and headbutt for a minute, right? So this behavior was going on, and they were working us. I mean, sheep country, and they were working us pretty good. We were having a hard time keeping up with them, and that was the group of rams that were doing the headbutting. So we finally got to a spot where they were down kind of by some water, and they decided that they were going to hang out there for a bit, and had some pretty good photo opportunities and stuff, and tried to capture some photos of them headbutting, trying to time that perfect headbutt and so on, and didn't really succeed. It's one thing I've learned is you need a lot of opportunities, and you got to be in the right situation. You'd finally get it, and there'd be a ram in the way or something. You know how that goes, right? So getting them to separate and getting a shot that's makes sense or would be worthy was really difficult. So it was fun trying, and we kept trying, but that situation came when I was down right by the water, and the rams were down, I don't know, about 50 yards from us. And all of a sudden, though, there was 3 rams that ran towards us, and they were literally so close to me on their terms, again, just to be clear, that I couldn't go anywhere really, but they were literally about 5 feet from me when I took that cell phone video. And I could see it getting ready to happen. And so it's another one of those scenarios where I just put my camera down because there was no way I was going to capture anything with it. They're way too close, and turned on the cell phone. And just the timing of that was just perfect. I mean, I wish I could have got photos of that, and because it was the perfect scenario. But it's incredible. I mean, it's like elk rut. You feel it, when they crack heads and they're that close to you. It literally does sound like a 22 going off or something, and you can feel that, and you can just the echo of it just reverberates through the country. So it's really incredible to witness and experience. And you alluded to it, Mark, but their behaviors in general are just incredible. And how, if you spend a little time with them, how well they accept you once they understand you're not a threat. It's one of the species that is the most accepting of people from what I've experienced. And it's incredible that they will just trust you that well. I mean, I've talked about it before, I think, but I've had a ewe lay down right behind me when I didn't realize she was there, and was totally comfortable with me being right by her and closed her eyes. I've had rams lay down 10 feet from me after they approached me and laid down and went to sleep, closed their eyes. So that level of trust from a critter, and it's not unique to just me. I know that. I mean, I'm not no sheep whisperer, and it's not unusual for that to happen with anybody that spends time with them, right? Yeah. Anybody that spends time with them in the field and lets them, is patient and lets them get used to you and comfortable with you. Anybody could have that experience, I think, right? So, but yeah, that's probably one of my favorite experiences. And a big part of that obviously is because my, hunter was there with me, and to have all that headbutting so chaotic for a full day, it just went on and on and on. And got a great workout too, because they were running us all over the place. So yeah, that's one thing about sheep country, is when you go, generally speaking, you're going to get a pretty good workout. And you may not have to go far. I don't want to be one of those guys that tries to play up that it's always such an insane hike and it can take forever and your feet bleed and all that kind of fun stuff, right? It's not necessarily always like that. It can be like that. Don't get me wrong, but in most cases, you can get to a group of sheep pretty easily with a little bit of work. And then but the fun part is if they run you around, they don't just stay put, generally speaking. They like to move a lot.
And by running you around, you mean they move and you follow them.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry. Thank you. Yeah. They're not chasing me. Yeah. No. Yeah. You got this picture of these rams running me all over the mountain. And they are, but they're not chasing me. I'm chasing them, if you will.
Well, you're following and
they're not running from me. Yeah, but I'm not chasing them either. Yeah, sorry. All this terminology, I get it. But I'm following them, and they are, like I said, they're very accepting. I'm not changing their behavior. I want to be clear about that, right? Once these sheep get used to you, you're not changing their behavior. And you still need to respect them and give them their space and all that stuff. And with our lenses, we want to be back anyways, right? Like I just mentioned. But they will approach you quite often, so it's one of those things. It's a really neat thing to experience. So sorry, I've rambled on too much.
Not at all. That was not as long as I did. So you're good for another 5.
We've talked about that day that we had with the Dall sheep in central Alaska often. And obviously that's the best Dall sheep day I've ever had. The only other time I've ever photographed Dall sheep was hopping off the buses and going to photograph them. Bighorn sheep, though, I do that every year. I've done that every year for probably 20 years. And the most insane day, I enjoyed it because it was something that I could do with my dad. My dad had a stroke, and so his mobility was limited. But photographing sheep in northern Wyoming is pretty easy. There's a lot of it that happens right almost roadside, and there were times where I'd leave him in the car and I would go get to a better vantage point or whatever. But most of the time we were just together, so we could do that. And they're a little bit later down here than they might be elsewhere. Mid-December tends to be the peak of the rut activity. Early to mid-December, I guess. But his birthday was December 23rd, so we'd always go up then. And so those were special times. Probably the best day that I ever had, the most unique day, was I was with Doug Gardner, Wild Photo Adventures, Natural History Channel, I think on YouTube, but Doug's a cinematographer for several different companies. Just a fantastic photographer as well, but great cinematographer. And then my cousin Randy White. Randy lives up in this area, so tend to stay at his place when I go up there. And we were up there with Doug one day. Doug got stuck. Let's just throw that out there. South Carolina vehicle, only South Carolina vehicle in the area, and it was stuck in the snow, and it was bad stuck. So we had to break out every Wyoming kid trick for getting out of the hard pan snow because it was high centered bad. So we were collecting all the kind of pyramidon type rocks, stuffing them under the tires so we could back up and get some leverage to get over the top of the hard pan that he was high centered in. But we get Doug out, and there was a ewe laying up on, and you could tell that she was a hot ewe because there was rams sleeping all around her, almost in a circle all the way around her. She was up on top of this cliff, and then there was one, big mature ram that was bedded down pretty close to her, and he was kind of keeping everything else away or at bay. And as the ewes do, when they're ready, they just take everything for a run. And if you can keep up, then you might get the opportunity to breed. So she got up, and she, instead of going around and coming down the little chute in the snow, she bailed straight off the cliff. And so did the ram. And all the other rams around her got up. Doug is somehow getting all this on video, and I've seen his footage. He was manually focusing the whole time, and this was just a complete circus. They were everywhere. And he manual focused that thing the whole time. Just talented guy. I was doing stills with autofocus, and it was a nightmare, with that scenario. But she took the big mature ram on a run, and then all the little rams joined her. So at one point, I think I had the most rams I had in one frame were 7, and they were just kind of side headbutting each other as they were pursuing her. And it was one fight after another, and just through the timber and over logs and around trees, and just everything you could imagine. It was just a crazy sequence, and it went on for about 35 minutes. I mean, it went on forever. But it was to the point where we were all standing there kind of next to each other. We didn't want to move because you didn't know where they were going to be. They tended to come back into view, so we were probably in the best location we could have been. Plus, the snow was deep, so we wouldn't have been ultra mobile in that situation. But after about 10 minutes of it, we were just giggling. It was like kids in a candy store. You're just having a blast and giggling, watching these sheep, and holy cow, I can't believe that just happened. And there they come again. It continued. But that was a fun day. Doug is changing batteries, changing cassettes on the shooting the red. So he has these cassettes, and the biggest ones are like 500 gigabytes, 480 gigabytes, I think. So he's changing batteries, changing cassettes. I'm just trying to keep up with the sheep, keep this ewe in view, and figure out where she's at. And I've seen it happen 3 or 4 times, but that particular time, it was like they read a script. It was they kicked off down the cliff and then came right over to the area where we were at and just kind of worked this little bowl, probably, yeah, again, over 30 minutes, all told. It was just a blast. And then to be able to share it with, with those guys. Doug does a workshop in that area every year, and he was kind of in between groups. And so we were able to just share some time together in the field. And then Randy and I get out a fair bit. Randy's a really good photographer as well, and have he has a lot of good encounters because he lives in that area. So that was, other than the Doll Sheep Day that, Mark, you and I had, that was my best sheep experience. You have them again and again and again. There'd be 2 good mature rams chasing a ewe that's taking them on a run, and those guys they don't tolerate the other one getting close if they can help it, where there's just 2 of them, and so they'll get the high ground. It's like for you Star Wars nerds like myself, Obi-Wan Kenobi getting the high ground on Anakin Skywalker, and then they just come down and let gravity do all the work and just pile drive the other ram below them. And you see some pretty good sequences of them getting knocked down the hill and that kind of thing during those times. But it's fun when you get a hot ewe and you just pay attention to the ram activity around them, and the more I guess aggressive they get toward the other rams, it's you just know it's going to be on. It's just a matter of time, and hopefully it happens in front of you, because it can go for miles and they can end up clear over the next ridge into the next drainage, in a hurry. Those things are tough, and they move through that mountain country faster than you ever could guess. But yeah, that's probably the couple of my favorite sequences that have happened photographing sheep.
Feeling it.
Mhm.
That's awesome. That's Vuja Day plus.
Vuja Day it was, for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Ron, I'm gonna get the chance to do some Denali sheep in August after our Katmai trip. I'm gonna stick around for a few days and go photograph them. And there may be a recreation of the famous pole pose, just so you're aware. But
I look forward to it.
yeah, I'm going to see if I can pull
Matter
it off.
of fact,
I don't think I can.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, I know. I'm saying up front, I don't think I can pull it off, but I'm going to try.
No, I honestly think that would make a great Beyond the Wild t-shirt.
And we just need to get Mark doing it too and put us all 3 on there.
Yeah. Be like the Beyond the Wild version of twerking. It's the pose.
What everybody wants. I don't know about you guys, but it's been asked so many times. Not really.
I get asked. I get asked on the regular. Yep.
Okay. Oh man, good for you.
Guy.
Good for you.
Can you pop it? Pop it.
Proof in the pose. It's awesome. Good times.
What about
it
you,
speaks
Mark?
to it.
Yeah. What about you? What's your favorite?
Well, I've got a couple, one for each species, but something quickly before telling the story, I got to throw a couple of pro tips out there. And one is, you think about where you're planning to go to photograph sheep, because it's mountain country. The light is variable. The weather is variable, which sometimes can be super cool, but be smart about when you're going up a mountain, depending on the weather systems moving through. But is the side of the mountain the sheep are on or anticipated to be sunny in the morning or sunny in the evening, or is it better to be overcast? So things to analyze about the landscape before picking the time to do the adventure, unless you're planning to go for the entire day, which can happen. And if that's the case, to make sure, in your pack, you have everything you need, from a rain shell to, I take like a little water filter, an Nalgene with an awesome Beyond the Wild sticker on it, full of water, power bars. And for those that have it, and I think the smartphones now have an SOS thing too. It's good to have that. And I also suggest going with a buddy, or not just on oneself, because it is mountainous terrain. So it's good to have someone else there and to share the experience and stories with. But yeah, analyze the light and predict the situation that's ideal to be in photographically for the side of the mountain that they're on, because it can vary. And because there are bears throughout sheep country too, I always carry bear spray, and be aware of that, and good footwear. We talked about that on previous podcasts. For mountain hiking, ankle support's a big deal. So I've seen people in some surprising footwear on a mountainside. Wouldn't want to risk it. So something to consider. Or hiking poles can really help depending on how arduous the hike is. Some are harder than others.
I used to make fun of people that had hiking poles.
Yeah, I think I remember that.
Until we did that dull sheep climb, and I was like, these things are awesome. Maybe the best thing ever invented.
I agree with you, Ron.
I think
Especially
they're good
downhill.
to have.
Downhill, they're
Yeah,
for
really
sure.
good to have.
Save your knees. Yeah.
So
Yeah, and take your time going downhill. Uphill, I mean, it's all about lungs and heart, and also taking breaks. It's not I don't approach it as a race, but as an enjoyable day. But going down, I learned my lesson 15 years ago in Alaska, descending a mountain too quickly and just jarring my knees. I was young enough, I didn't feel it till the next day, but I know my knees still remember that day. So coming down, it's foot placement and taking one's time. Take in the view. I mean, stop every once in a while and sit down and just enjoy the mountain air and the space, right? We talk about that. It's the photos and the animal encounters or something, but just being there is worthwhile too. So that's important. And quickly too, sheep biofact that I've always loved looking at for the rams, especially, and is you can count how old they are if you look carefully on their horns. There is a more defined line for the annual growth. So you can count whether a ram is 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old by studying the horns. And every 3 inches or so, you'll notice there's a darker, heavier line. And that's an awesome way to figure out the age of a ram. So my first story isn't a terribly long one. It was harkens back to what I was saying about sheep weren't on my radar early in my career. It was something I wanted to have in my portfolio for publishing, but it wasn't. They didn't draw me in until I had the experience, and I'd been in Alaska and Yukon many times and never devoted time to sheep because I was focusing on other species. And our producer, JG, was with me on a trip, and we decided to do a sheep day. And it had snowed the night before. And another photographer that I'm good friends with was in the region, and he had been up there before, but I don't think that day. And it was our last day in the area. So it's like, do we do it or not? And we're like, yeah, let's go for it. And this other photographer who knows his stuff, he's a fantastic photographer, said to us, don't go, you'll die. And so JG and I,
that's always encouraging in the morning,
right? We joke about that to this day. And in hindsight, I was a lot younger then. First time trying for doll sheep, and the snow was it was sporadic, but 2 or 3 inches maybe in spots. We took our time. That being said, I wouldn't recommend it now. I wouldn't look up the mountainside and see snow, and make sure that the snow hikes for sheep now are safe and doable. And I mean, obviously this one was, because we survived just fine, didn't have a slip or anything. But I wouldn't do the same hike today in those elements. But it's still a joke, inside joke for JG and I. So we hiked up the mountain. We got up there fine, and didn't see any sheep, no rams, nothing. We got almost to the top, not quite, a fair ways up, and we're like, okay, we're looking at our watches, and time to get back down in order to make it out before dark. So we started to descend, felt deflated, but it was still worth trying, as it always is when it's safe, snow aside. Please remember that. But on our way down, we made it about a third of the way down the mountain, and here comes this ram over a rim, maybe 50 yards from us, then another. And they came to us on the way down like a gift, And so we sat down, and as Jason Loftus here was commenting earlier on, sorry, I only say that because JG's name is Jason too. They'll get used to you. And if you're calm, I think that's the thing about a lot of non-aggressive animals. If you're calm, they can read that. And so these rams came around and close enough to get great images, great landscapes. And we descended down, and it was a delightful day in our lives that we cherish till now. It's the last Doll Sheep day that JG and I have done. We did a Bighorn day a few years after that. That was fun too. But it was my first encounter with Doll Sheep, and they stuck with me right away. Sheep have one of the most photogenic eyes of mammals, and just their markings, their stocky robustness. And again, to get images of them climbing around these rocks in this rugged terrain, and then to scan out with a wider lens and get the scene behind them, the falling off mountainside, is it's such a powerful image. And we really do connect with their space when we're in it safely. And I have a Bighorn one, but I probably should save that. You guys want to throw any more things out there? I mean, I can tell it in a few minutes, but it has, yeah.
Yeah, maybe one thing I'll add is what I really love about sheep too is they're one of the weirdest looking animals when you like really look at them and look at them close and look at the shape of their heads and the proportion of where their eyes are at and their facial structure, and they almost look alien. But they have also some of the coolest rut behavior, some of the tongue licking and the air licking and the
lip curling
grunts and the lip curling and the way they move their heads and that. They don't just put their head back. They do a lot of like moving their heads around in different angles, and yeah, their body language is incredible. They really are one of the most amazing animals to spend any time with a camera, for sure. Or even if you don't have a camera, they're incredible to spend time with just to watch. But yeah,
the interactions between the sexes too, the guys, the males, it's like if you've ever been around a group of teenage boys, all sheep are like that. Or if you've been around Jason Loftus.
Yeah, squirrel tap's a very common thing.
Shrugging it off. So, yeah, they'll just straight leg kick each other in the belly. And then, they'll kind of headbutt each other in the ribs or, crack horns. And then they're big horns, but they should be called something different. And they just straight leg crack each other in the testes on purpose. They look for it, they line up for it, and tee off. And I don't understand it at all. But it happens all the time. And that, for most people that are seeing that for the first time, it's like, did they just do that? Yeah, a lot.
You have to laugh yourself off the mountainside when you see it.
It's some of the behaviors are just nuts. And the little slight head tilts, and it gets, everything gets pretty intricate when you start watching it. And there's just so much to capture. Some of it, you can tell those stories with still images, and some of it is way better looking at it on video. But just the little intricacies of their communication and interaction are just fun to watch.
And observe and photograph and film, right? I mean, there's a lot to it. You think it's just a sheep on the mountainside. No,
Mm-hmm.
there's so much behavior and expression. And even, one of the photos and videos I put on Instagram from this fall's experience with bighorns, they'll lean on each other and you can see the attitude and the pre-rut stuff, as you were saying, Jason. I mean, all that behavior is awesome to watch and complemented by an amazing landscape. Another quick tip, if you're going to be up there for the day and it's sunny, wear stuff that, I mean, for me, I get sunburnt easily. So if I sit up there and get distracted taking pictures, and I even take gloves, like light breathable gloves for mountain hikes with the hiking poles and stuff. I know I don't look the coolest. I'm not like looks like a winter skier outfit, but otherwise, like, you can get burnt over hours that way. So I have a buff and a hat and gloves that I wear. But
I think you must photograph sheep in a lot better conditions than I photograph sheep in.
the weather's good too. Yeah,
the only burn I've ever got is a wind burn because
it can be. Yeah, some of the sheep places are so windy at times, and obviously they live there. They don't mind, right? Or there's a lee side of a hill that they spend time on out of the wind. But some of my bighorn places are great on sunny days. So I look for those. Overcast works fine too, though. And weather, blowing snow and stuff like that, it's fun. And the bighorn hikes that I do are safer for some snow conditions. And so where are we at for time? My other story is kind of a personal, funny one. I see if I can tell this in a way. It was a trip with my daughter Martha about 10 years ago, and we decided to devote a day to sheep with my good friend Joey, who is one of the premier sheep photographers in
contrary to what you'll see on Instagram, Joey is the premier, in my opinion. If we're talking about the same Joey, and I think we are.
Yeah, Joey Oliveri and his experiences across the continent and his collection of imagery and just his personality. And love you, brother. Missed you. Has been too long. But so he was on this day, and my dear friends Eric and Debbie Brewer. So the 5 of us were going up for sheep, and it was one of the last days of the trip for Martha and I. And we'd start the day pre-dawn in a coveted bakery and get a coffee, and we get whatever, you get sandwiches for the day, and so I get a few things. But this is a fun story because I thought I was being a nice guy. It was our last day with our friends on this trip, so there were rum balls in this bakery. I can hear Eric and Debbie right now. So there was a container of them, so I bought them all for the group to share that last day. And we were sitting around the table. Everybody kind of already had their stuff, so only Martha and I had a rum ball in the bakery. So I gave Joey the bag, and then we headed out, and we headed on the drive. It took a fair while to get to where the sheep were on this trip. And we got there, and we hiked up and hiked for an hour or so, and it was snowing, and we glassed where the sheep were that day, and they were too far for us to be able to access. There was a big mountain crevice between us, and the weather was inclement. It wasn't going to work. So we gave up on it and just had some fun together, hiked back down to where we'd parked, and started heading north. Well, Joey and Eric and Deb went ahead of Martha and I by 5 minutes or so. And there was no cell coverage, no communication in this area. Well, Martha and I left, we rounded a bend, we looked up the hill, and there's this group of rams at an accessible point. Yeah. And so it's like our last time, let's go for it. So we pulled off, parked, and hiked up to the sheep. And Martha and I had an amazing time. and spent a couple of hours photographing a band of rams. Like Jason said, there's usually 8 to 10 individuals in a group, especially pre-rut. And we had some super encounters with this group, the two of us. Great memory with her that I always cherish. And the images too have been great sellers over the years, and the settings and so on. The Rumball story comes in after. So an hour or so after Eric and Deb left, they came back. Sweethearts, right? I mean, they thought we'd broken down or something. And I was like, oh, I feel so badly. We weren't. And then this is the banter we all have. It's great. They're like, well, wait a minute. You knew you were going to do this. You just didn't want to include us. I was like, no. So funny. But it was very nice of them to come back and check on Martha and I. And then I heard the story that Joey had, since he had the rumballs, he had one. And almost immediately got sick to his stomach.
Oh.
And there was something in the rumballs that didn't agree with everybody. And so again, on a joking way, with all these friends, these dear friends I have, he was trying to accuse me of poisoning him that day to keep him off the sheep. Obviously not the case. Love them all like family. But it's the fun we have on trips and things that unfold. And I hope it's okay to share in a story like this with you guys. But
if it's not Joey, he shared it anyway.
Well, what do you mean? I'm confused. It is Joey.
But no, yeah, I'm
actually,
saying, listen, hang on. I'm saying if it's not okay, Joey, he shared it anyway.
Yeah.
Oh, well, it was so unintentional. Yeah. And actually, I forgot, Joey's son, Aaron, was on trip that day too. And he went up, he bailed off a bit early to go for mountain goats. So, but a very memorable day. The images will always stick. The memory with my daughter, the rams were incredible. The setting of the blowing snow in the mountains were unforgettable. And then the great humor with my friends. And I only wish the only different outcome would have been that we'd all left together and they would have had the same photographic experience with me on that day. But they've had many. And as you say, Ron, and Joey has had experiences that so many of us can only dream of when it comes to sheep country. So hats off to you.
That's cool. Yeah, I think about pro tips for sheep. I would think one of mine would be, most of the places I go to photograph sheep, and I'm not by any means bragging here, but it generally includes a hike, and I'm going to be out for the day. So I generally am always going to have my f-stop backpack with me, and I'm going to go as light as possible. And I always take a meal or some kind, right? Whether it's a jet boil and some freeze dried or a sandwich or something, whatever, just something to snack on while you're on the mountain. Because the sheep lay down and rest too, right? That they're like any other critter. So when they do, we do, right? It's kind of fun to hang out with them and eat your lunch or whatever. But yeah, I would definitely go lightweight. But one of the things I do when I shoot sheep for sure is I love to have my cotton carrier chest rig with me. And I love to have, usually I have like my 400 prime, and then I'll have a 70 to 200 on my chest rig, because there's so many amazing landscapes to capture. And I've been doing trying to capture more of those wider landscape type images with the animals in them. And sheep are just prime for that. So and there's lots of times I'll put the 400 down and grab that 70 to 200. And sometimes those situations unfold very quickly. So you don't necessarily want it in your backpack necessarily. You want to have it at the ready to roll, so you can switch modes and go landscape, if you will. So that'd be a little tip from my perspective, is to try to go light if you can, for sure, just because it makes a more pleasant day. And then always have, like, I take 2 bodies with me and have one on my chest rig ready to roll. And the cotton carrier setup is just awesome for that. So, and I can hike with it. I love hiking. I don't have a problem hiking with my chest rig with the 7200 and the camera on there, because the way it works and it straps it down, it's not bouncing around. It's not going anywhere. And when you need it, it's just a simple, quick flip and twist and you're shooting. So anyways, there's a quick pro tip.
We have quite a few guests on our caribou tours and on sheep that I've tours that I've done that have the cotton carrier, and it becomes an important part of their setup. Obviously, easy access. So
Yep.
totally get it in a situation like that. In the 70-2, it's a great lens to have for sheep.
Yeah.
Let's say another thing that you need to be careful of with sheep, and Mark kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier with the advice that he got about going up in the snowstorm, is know your limits. Friend of mine, Glenn Conley, I met Glenn photographing elk in Grand Teton National Park one year, and the elk went up the ridge, and I just looked at him and, you want to go? And so we went. We've kind of followed him up on top and got some pretty good vistas. Well, there was a band of sheep with a pretty good ram. They were in this real narrow bowl, but in looking down the valley, I could see that once you got up to where this ram was bedded down, you were going to be able to see the entire valley. And it would have just been this grand vista. And so we started up, and going through these narrow chutes, you can easily get yourself rim rocked, and we kind of did. And so we made this, short climb. It was a short climb, but it was a climb. And this is one of those times where you had to have something like the cotton carrier or a backpack, because you needed both hands on the rocks in front of you. And get up there and kind of slipped off a rock or two, and Glenn slipped off a rock or two and kind of went on a little slide. But we made it up to where we needed to get to, and it was beautiful. There was this grand vista, but right in the middle of this shot, and there was no way to change elevation to get it out of your shot, was the stinking ranger station. And I couldn't find an angle where the ranger station wasn't in the shot, because if you moved, a little bit to your left where it would have been out, you're behind a tree, and there's no way to get closer because it was a really narrow chute. And so we did all that climbing, didn't really get a lot to show for it, but it was good memory. But know your limits, because you can get yourself in a bind in a hurry photographing sheep if you're not careful. And then the other thing that I would say, going back to our conversation about elk, and Jason tried to lead me into this one. I didn't realize it till after, and we didn't even talk about it. But photograph sheep year round. It's a little bit more difficult different times of year because they do head very high. But they'll get up in the wildflowers, and you get, lambs bouncing through the wildflowers and lambs nursing, and you get in kind of that nursery situation where you've got a lot of interaction and they play quite a bit. But the reason for photographing any species, including the elk that Jason was trying to get me to, is because you get requests for images all the time, and you never know what they're going to want. There may be a story on just lambs, and that's all they want. And if you've got, that good portfolio of year-round behaviors, you're going to be able to land some of those shots and sell some of those shots. So it is definitely something that you should be doing year-round, and that's just another reason why, not just to tell the whole story, the whole life story, but also for marketing reasons, shoot every behavior you can imagine.
It's a good one. Yeah, the knowing your limits is a big one, and it's a safety concern for sure. I've been in a couple bad situations shooting desert sheep, where following somebody and getting to a point where it's like, man, I don't know. And I stop, and the person I'm with is like, it's if one slip and we're dead. Like literally, it's one of those scenarios. Like one slip and you're going to die. It's just no other ifs, ands, or buts. And I'm like, nope, I'm done. And the person I was with had gone far enough to where they were having a really, really hard time even getting turned around to come back down the trail. So, and it was a sheep trail of all things, right? So you can imagine where they'll go. So anyways, yeah, that's a really good one, Ron. Like, just, be careful when you're in that country, because anything could go wrong. And don't push yourself too much because it could get real ugly real quick. So don't go alone. Mark said that. That's a good reason to not go alone, so you can kind of keep each other honest too, right? So
Yeah. Safety is most important. It's just photography we're talking about here, right? So photos are only worth so much, and it's not worth risking injury. And many times we turn around for a variety of reasons with different species, right? It's respecting the situation, whether or the habitat or the animals themselves happens all the time. But yeah, it's just photography, so keep it safe, and it's our priority now. And it's something, especially the older I get, the moments don't have to involve a risk of any significance to be enjoyable. And there are access to sheep places, despite how some of this episode sounds. I mean, it's thrilling to get there, but some of the places are quite accessible to photograph bighorn sheep or Dall sheep. It doesn't always have to involve a difficult climb by any means. So seeing pictures of them, don't always assume that either, that it's been a difficult climb. Some of them we've driven over mountain passes in Alaska where Andrew, my son, and I were on a trip, and there were probably a dozen rams all right along the road, but it was a mountain pass, so great vistas. We even had one laying on a road, off the side of the road, close enough as we slowly drove past. I took a picture back then out the window of Andrew looking at the ram. So it was a privilege to be in their habitat in that situation with relative ease. But that was on a really high pass, but that we were driving on. So when it comes to the hiking, yeah, you've got to be up to it and know what you're capable of, and always be careful about it, because it's just photography. Right.
But and I think it's good to stress again. I don't. Sometimes it drives me crazy when people portray something that it's just it's not that. And there's lots of folks I've heard and seen that would like you to believe that you've walked miles and miles and hiked into some crazy country. And sometimes you do. Like literally, I've been in those scenarios and I've done that for sheep. But I've also, like you said, I've photographed sheep with hardly any effort at all. And there's both scenarios available out there. So, a little research and you can have either or both of those experiences, So I think that's important to know. It's not all about the machismo and I hiked forever and ever to, get to a specific shot or something. And to your point, you don't got to put yourself in danger to get the shots, so.
It's never worth it. Yeah. To really, to be, yeah. Something about sheep too is a full curl is when the horns come up and past the eyes. And it's a challenge sometimes, but fun, with their head positioning is where do you place the eye? Where do you place the horn? If it's a close-up portrait, and just working with those angles in addition to their expressions. As Ron said, they're very expressive. So there's a lot of photographic potential with sheep, and it's a species that's easy to fall in love with after spending a day or more with them. They are really photogenic and such an incredible habitat they exist in. And as Jason pointed out too, once they realize that we're calm, they become fairly trusting, which makes it a good photographic opportunity often.
Yeah, and a neat experience. I mean,
yeah, I love the pictures.
Yeah. Well, anytime an animal, in my opinion, anytime an animal gets that accepting to you, it's kind of a neat experience for you, just a personal experience too, So
very much, yeah. It means something to us, right? Whether we recognize it on the surface or not, to be around such a magnificently different animal and to have like a calm space shared with them in their home. Yeah, it hits home for us. And I think that's all part of the sharing the experience that I'll say for the last time about this, but it thrills me to do that, right? As much as taking pictures now is just, those experiences are out there. And I think that's what motivates so many of us to keep pursuing this awesome profession or pastime or hobby that wildlife and nature photography is. There's always elements of surprise. You don't know what you're going to see, right? Even hiking up for sheep, you'll see other species. Other things will happen. The light will change. But it's the thrill of what we do. And just with sheep country, keep the common sense behind the actions. Do we cover sheep? There's so many more things. We could talk about species differentiation more and probably some other elements. But for our opener on wild sheep photography, we good?
I think so. I think we could probably do another episode on it and get into a lot of the different, like you said, and differentiation between species. And there are some unique things about the different ones. And, maybe even regionally, like areas to kind of like type of country and that to look for the different species in and so on and so forth. Right. So, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they're fun. Amazing habitat.
We good, Ron? He's shaking his head on a podcast, by the way, just so everybody knows.
I am good. Yes. Jason, thank you.
It's a day to manage your kit for, of all days, right? Our sheep days. Yeah. So, and layers, wool underlayer, and then be aware of temperatures. It varies considerably in sheep country, but it's been a lot of fun over the years to have encounters with them, and some of the most memorable days in the field. And if you're watching on YouTube, you will be able to enjoy the content that our producer JG adds to the show, the photos and videos. Please give us a thumbs up. And if you have 3 seconds to spare, a comment, those help on YouTube to give us traction. And yes, Ron.
I forgot one thing. And this may be my favorite thing about sheep is that for the charismatic megafauna, sheep are not necessarily early risers. You do not have to beat yourself up to get up there before daylight like you do with other species. They become more active as the day warms up and as the light comes out. And so, yeah, that's a positive at the end of a long rut season. Yeah.
Well, nobody wants to hike a mountainside. And again, access and trails are variable across the continent, depending on where the sheep are. Some are very easy, but nobody wants to do it in the dark. So there's, as Ron says, there's no need. So make it the time of day comfortable. And we want to thank our sponsors, Pictureline, for all that they do for the podcast, as you heard on today's episode. If you are looking for camera gear of any brand or sort, please feel free to, we encourage you, I should say, to contact Pictureline and ask for Colin Bigelow. Thank you to so many of you that we know have ordered your camera gear from them, and we have yet to hear anything but a positive, very positive feedback from everybody who has dealt with Colin Bigelow, our representative at Pictureline. And there are stickers there. And if for some reason you don't get stickers, reach out to us. And if you've ordered something, we'll get them to you. We have more and more people mentioning the merch site and wanting to have the awesome swag that some of us are rocking here on the podcast. And we'd love nothing more than for you to have it as well. And that's something that we will work on getting completed. I know we've mentioned it before, and it's just a number of hours in the day, but it's important to us. So don't think we've forgotten about it. And I want to just we want to spend a moment and just give a big shout out to JG, our producer, who's been doing so much for the show and creating these great episodes, especially the YouTube content that he adds all the elements to in his efforts for Beyond the Wild podcast. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this week's show about wild sheep country and our catch-up. More episodes to come soon. Other species coming down the pipeline. Stay cool out there and enjoy your outdoors and photography when weather permits. And we'll see you again next week.
And that's a wrap for another episode of Beyond the Wild podcast. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Pictureline.com, your online source for everything photography, and Canon USA.